Welcome to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. I'm Jan Bresky, and in this podcast, I explore how Los Angeles recovers from the recent devastating wildfires. In each episode, I sit down with developers, community leaders, and other real estate professionals to uncover what it really takes to rebuild homes and neighborhoods. If you're looking to understand what's next for LA, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Good morning and welcome. And I'm excited to have our guests today, Conor O'Donovan and Dylan Hart from Village Rebuild. Conor and Dylan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, John.
It's a pleasure. So tell us about Village Rebuild in sort of a 1 minute, and then let's go into each of your backgrounds, how you met, and then we'll go into much more depth about what you're doing with the Village Rebuild.
Yeah. Happy to. So what we're doing at Village Rebuild, we're two locals on the west side. Dylan grew up in the Palisades, and we can get more into that. But we both have real estate backgrounds, and when the fires happened, we really kind of banded together to try and help the community where we could. And what that translated into was really, using our real estate backgrounds to go partner with homeowners to go rebuild their homes, and then also purchase lots to go do our part and build homes.
Okay, so you are both building homes for sale and also rebuilding homes for homeowners.
Correct.
Terrific. And do you have a kind of a mix that you expect between those two activities in terms of how many homes you're planning to do? Is it sort of 50-50, or is it more weighted in one direction or the other?
I think it's as the opportunities present themselves, and we'll get into later what partnering with the homeowners look like. That's something we're very passionate about, want to do more of, just because it's a community we care about. It's a community we grew up in. But those opportunities need to come as people see fit. And then on the, purchase spec home development, it's with the goal of maintaining kind of the architectural diversity that existed in the Palisades, and making sure that the town comes back hopefully quicker than many people are kind of foreshadowing.
Okay, that's a great kind of baseline. So maybe if you could each give me a real brief background about each of your career paths to this point, and then how you came together to do this. Maybe let's do 1 minute on each topic. 1 minute each on
Sure.
your background, and then maybe a minute on how you came together.
Perfect. Yeah. Happy to kick it off, Don. I mean, so I have been in the real estate private equity world my whole career, mostly focused on, large scale, multifamily investing, industrial investing, and grew up actually in the Inland Empire. My dad's a contractor and built homes for most of his career. And so I started out at a young age, just kind of on construction sites, sweeping around and helping out. And yeah, and Dylan, you can give your background as well.
Yeah, I worked in the real estate development space. I actually worked for Rick Caruso, worked on the Palisades Village, which is kind of this bittersweet moment for me as I watched Morts go away, but the town get revitalized. And from there, worked at a variety of other private equity and real estate development companies, always focused on finance and development. So project finance, acquisitions, and then the actual construction side of things as well.
And how did you come together, and why did you both decide that you wanted to focus on this now?
Yeah, Connor was working at a real estate brokerage investment bank based in Santa Monica. We met through a friend and have always talked about later in our careers building single family homes when we were done with the kind of real estate private equity, wearing suits and ties every day. And when the fire broke out, it was obviously very close to home. My family lost 3 homes. So I was in it every day. I was in the Palisades the day after the fires, putting out spot fires at my grandmother's house, which is next door to my mom's, which survived. And we were on the phone, and we realized at some point that there could be good custodians of capital in the Palisades. There could also be not great custodians, and we wanted to make sure that the town came back in a fashion that honored the old integrity. And so we just kept talking every day, and come May of last year, both joined forces, and this is what we're doing full time.
Okay. And you're going to be doing homes for sale where you buy the land, you build the house and then sell it. And you're also rebuilding homes for owner occupants. It sounded like you referenced maybe a unique model, and not only building as a GC for, for those people that can pay for you to build, but maybe something other than that. Just to clarify, are you available to owner occupants as a straight GC, or are you exclusively rebuilding homes through this other model? And can you explain that other model a little bit, please?
Yeah, happy to. I'm glad you asked. The short answer is yes, we're available as GCs to owner occupants. The model is threefold. Either we're your GC and we can do some design build as well. We have a architect who rolls his fee in for equity in some of our projects. He's a great architect. Pedigreed, actually used to work for former guest of yours, Marmal Radziner, and then was also at UIRC. So that's one. Second is we just buy lots, design, build on spec. And the third is partnering with landowners in a more nuanced strategy. It's borrowed from our kind of commercial real estate, multifamily, is really kind of the most common use case, and it's a land contribution deal, and it's one in which the landowner rolls in their land into the deal at a kind of predetermined valuation for equity. We raise some additional equity around them, and then we handle everything thereafter.
Okay, so Dylan, you were just talking about the model that where you contribute the land. So walk us through how that model works.
Right. So a homeowner has land right now. They're often going through the insurance fight, and they don't necessarily want to sell, don't have the means just yet to build, or need to collect additional insurance proceeds. They roll their land in at a predetermined valuation for equity. We raise some additional capital around them to get through a permit. We then also handle all financing. So we finance the land, get a construction loan, and then we handle the build, also handle the design during that process. At the end, we either go to sell together as partners, and they're treated like other equity partners, or they buy out the equity partners as if it was a sale. Call it a synthetic call option on the back end.
Okay, so that makes sense. So there's no long-term partnership where you remain an owner of the property and they're living in the home. It ends up either the home is either sold to a third party, or they buy the property at some predetermined price. I think that's a really innovative offering, and it allows the owner of the land to not have to deal with a lot of things that they would otherwise have to do, right?
Right.
If they wanted to rebuild and sell. And it's an interesting offering. What do you think the cost per square foot to range ends up being? Let's just say somebody wants to come back and live in their house, as an example, and they're considering different companies. There's some companies that are offering, here's six different design options you can choose from, and 12 different finishes or whatever. What does your cost per square foot end up being? What is kind of the range? Or are you doing custom, or are you doing sort of a limited number of designs to control cost?
So
Yeah.
I think on that point, I think it's a key point of kind of what we're focused on, which is we're designing to each lot. So we're doing a custom build each time and not really bringing floor plans. So it's definitely a different option compared to the kind of predetermined, have a few different options of floor plans and kind of facades and all that good stuff. So really it's going to be a range depending on finish level, if we're partnering with a homeowner, we really kind of sit alongside them as much as they want to, as far as trying to honor their home's legacy and trying to figure out, what makes the most sense for the constraints of the lot, what kind of form we want, what did the neighborhood used to look like. So we're really trying to be specific. So in there really depends, right? So in a neighborhood like, the Huntington Palisades, right, that had a lot of really, high value homes, those I would say, we might be getting into the kind of 800 per square foot territory.
Right.
But then when you look at, a very simple flat lot where, we're not really doing anything too complicated, we're going to be touching closer to the, call it 600 per square foot.
That makes sense. So, I mean, I know that for custom homes, the price per square foot, you can't compare it to the price per square foot for a model, which is one of 6 models.
Yeah.
So tell us about projects that you have underway right now in some form. How many total do we have? It sounds like you've purchased some lots already. How many lots have you purchased?
We've purchased 2. One was outright purchase. The other was one of these land contribution deals. And
Okay.
we can get into that. And then we're working on, kind of on a PM construction management side, working on my family's homes, another 3.
Okay. So you have you kind of have one of each model underway. One is a land contribution model. And is that owner planning to move by at the end, or are they planning to let you sell it, or are they still deciding?
I think it's still up in the air. I think more likely they will sell at the end. That was one we're really proud of, and that was kind of how, you craft this idea and then you go do a deal and you really learn what it looks like. And so that one was someone whose insurer was holding back proceeds. And they said, we will only release the remainder of your insurance proceeds or dwelling coverage if you can show us receipts that you're building. And so we're really proud that we were able to do a deal where he retained ownership. He's been showing receipts and collecting additional proceeds. He had a mortgage that should have been in forbearance, but was accruing. And we helped pay that off with some of the insurance proceeds he's got and some of the equity we brought in. But if he went and outright sold the land, he would have probably fallen short of paying off the mortgage, and he would have forfeited the right to the additional insurance proceeds. So by doing the deal, he retained ownership, he paid off his mortgage, and he has access to the remainder of his insurance proceeds.
Okay, great. And let's switch gears for a minute. What are your thoughts on the rebuild overall? What you spent a lot of time in the Palisades. What are you seeing? I drove through there a few weeks back and I saw quite a bit of construction going on, and it's encouraging in a way to see that, but it's still a small fraction of the lots that have been something's been started on. But what are your observations, and maybe has anything surprised you since you started this venture?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. We track this stuff pretty diligently. We're tracking every sale. We're finding out who's buying and who's building. We're tracking every permit on unique addresses, etc. So I'm going to throw some stats at you. They're rounded. They might be a tiny bit stale. There's about 7,000 structures that burnt in the fire, but when you kind of double click on that, it's the Palisades fire as a whole. And it includes commercial structures. When you segregate Palisades and Malibu, commercial versus homes, and we're really focused on single family homes, there's about 5,000 homes that burnt in the Palisades. There's about 2,000 that survived, one being my mother. My mother is back and living there now, so I kind of have firsthand as to what's going on there. A lot of these surviving homes, insurers did not want to continue to pay for them to live elsewhere. And so it was a tough fight with insurance, but at a certain point, they released funds to do remediation because they didn't want to continue to pay for these people to live elsewhere. That's her experience, not everyone's. So you will have this influx of about 2,000 families, homes that will return in the next, I would assume, 6 months, about 18 months after the fire. So that's one. Two, of the 5,000, 20% have pulled a permit, unique addresses. So call that about 1,000. And I'm rounding down on this number, but I believe it's about 15%. So call it 750 are into the city, ourselves included, for a permit. When those 750 get their permits, the assumption is they'll start building. We're in there every day. We've been in there every day since March. It looks a lot different now that the Army Corps cleaned up, and now that where rubber really meets the road is when someone frames up and you go, oh, wow, there's a lot of progress. But we're also driving pretty diligently and seeing who's laying foundation and who's got their plumbing in the ground, because framing is naturally the next step there. And I think that momentum will continue. I think there was a 6-month period of, what do I do? Do I sell? What's insurance going to look like? Do I build? What does it cost to build? It's a big learning curve, and most of these people have not had to build from the ground up before. So combining those stats a little bit, you have about 15 or 35% in the next 6 months that will be vertical of the burnt lots.
That's a huge number. I think that's a lot more than most people were guessing a year ago.
Right.
Totally.
And so we remain cautiously optimistic. And as we've worked through the process with the city, early on was really fast. Now I think it's a little slower, but I don't think that's the city's fault. I think that's by virtue of more people putting in permits and their workload stacking up, which is kind of an encouraging sign for us. We obviously want to get permitted quickly, but them taking longer by way of reviewing more permits means that the town is coming back quicker. So we're obviously happy about that.
Okay. I might have a chance to meet our mayor of Los Angeles in the coming weeks. And if I were going to convey a message from you as small business owners, builders, what message would you want to pass through? And it doesn't have to relate to the fires. It could be anything related to how the city is managing the city. How are we doing in terms of running the city?
It's a fun question. I'm going to focus it on the fires just because we're in that every day. I think for us, we were very cautious about being the outside developer. We know this town really well. As a lifelong resident of the town, I'm also cautious about developers. That said, it took the city a while to waive permit fees. They said they were going to do it. It went to city council. They waived it for homeowners. I think that's great. I think you do need some public-private partnership in order to really jumpstart the rebuild. The fees are not waived for people who bought lots after the fact. I think that would incentivize build. And right now, I think that's important. It's a little penny wise and pound foolish, in my opinion, on the city's part, because though you have people who are displaced, who are not paying taxes to the city or to the county when they're not home. So you're collecting permit fees, which is a source of revenue, but you're not getting that recurring revenue of these people are there and they're paying taxpayer dollars. I think they would be wise to incentivize people to build in the town. That will help it come back quicker.
I'd like to hear from you, Connor, on that same question about what message would you want to pass up through to the Mayor Bass?
For me personally, I just think, the community of the Palisades has been really resilient, and I think has done a really incredible job of banding together to try to find as many ways to have a loud voice in this sort of local politics as possible. And what my message would really just to be for the mayor and the local government to continue listening to that voice of what the real concerns are, and to have a very transparent form of communication back. Because I feel like a lot of times it feels very one-sided in that respect. And it can feel like you're not really getting much as far as transparency in a clear kind of message as far as rebuilding and having really signs of encouragement. So that would really be my message.
Okay, great. So give us a sense of how many projects you'd like to take on over what period of time, and then where do you go when this rebuild is mostly behind us? Because from the numbers you're giving, that actually could be, it'll be a long time before all the lots rebuilt, obviously, but you could have most of the lots could be underway within a couple of years, if I'm understanding, maybe less, maybe another 18 months, in which case, once it's underway, you're either involved or you're not, right? So what are you thinking in terms of beyond the rebuild?
Yeah, and I guess one more stat I didn't throw out there early on was there's been about 370 lots that have sold, a little more than that. And there's about 300 on the market. Maybe a little less than that, but combined, those two make up 10%. So if within, call it 14 months, we've only seen 10% of the burnt homes go up for sale, I think it's prudent to say maybe another 10 max through the end of the fire. So we're talking about 1,000 homes, maybe even less. So we'd like to do 5 to 10 a year because we're building custom, because we're building high-end homes. We have to focus on quality for sure. We're also building for a family, and we can get into that. And that's kind of what Palisades always was and what we envision it to be when it returns. Where we go from there is other parts of LA, and then maybe we'll spread outside of the city of LA, building custom homes.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great. What question did I fail to ask that I should have asked you about the business, about the rebuild itself? What other thoughts do you have that you want to share that you think might be of interest to our audience, which is people that are involved in rebuilding, people that maybe lost a home and are trying to decide what to do, also real estate investors generally, especially here in our region? What other notes would you like to add?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, one thing, someone that what I did not grow up in the Palisades. I lived on the west side of LA for the last 10 years, but really rolling up our sleeves and joining this community, both the community of residents, but also the folks that are other builders, other subs. I think what a lot of people don't talk about is how encouraging it has been. I think, a lot of the subcontractors are willing to, really lend advice, really, share notes and talk to other builders. Like there's no competitive sense really. Everyone is kind of linking arm in arm to rebuild. And so I think that sense of community and optimism for me personally has just been really encouraging in the face of just so much devastation.
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer the question about homeowners, it's tough. It's an uphill battle. I think it is to Connor's point, a really tight-knit community. It's hard to find that same community elsewhere. If you're gonna do it, our advice is to get started, and if we can help just giving advice, be happy to do so. But our goal is to have this place back, and it is a long process. It's gonna take 2 or 3 years. If you're gonna do it, get started.
Yeah, which again is, I think, much faster than most of my guests have been estimating, and you're bringing some hard data, Dylan, which has been helpful. Which I'm very surprised and encouraged by how many permits have been pulled already, how many permits are in process. That's impressive. And it sounds like maybe only 20% of the lots will end up going to developers, roughly, and 80% would be rebuilt by the owner, most likely.
Yeah, and I want to touch on I think you made a point earlier that, you asked who we envision coming in and what does it look like. Tougher to track, but we are tracking who's buying in the Palisades. Of those, call it 7% that have sold, about 60% have been owner users and 40% have been developers. And these are folks who are younger, doctor, lawyers, entertainment, kind of, the same profile of people that was moving to the Palisades pre-fires. And so when we build, we're always thinking about that. The Palisades was a place that had really good public schools, some good private elementary schools, safe community, etc. So every house we build has in mind that there's going to be, a family with at least 2 kids. And so we're building for the most part 4 or 5 bedroom homes with kind of the concept in mind that there'll be parents in one room, 2 children's room, and a guest room or 2 guest rooms. Because that's who made up the town. And as we look through who's buying lots that aren't developers, it's folks that fit that profile.
So a substantial portion of the lots that have sold to owner users that are going to build their own custom home, not just developers. That's interesting too. So maybe the developer share of the market, if you will, of the rebuild is as low as 10% of the lots from what you're saying, right? Because if roughly 20% of the lots are going to sell, and then roughly half of those are to developers and the other half are to owner users building a custom home, that's only about 500 homes that get built as new spec homes.
Yeah, now I suspect that'll flip at a certain point. As we've seen more come online, call it in the last 3 months, it's moving quicker. And that number is trending kind of the opposite to developer versus, owner user. But I think 50-50 is probably where it makes out in the end. It's half owner user, half developer. So yeah, to your point, 500 or 600 developer homes. I think that's also somewhat a function of, developer, ourselves included, where you're looking at every line item, and we do have to pay permit fees right now, to my earlier point, that homeowners don't have to pay. And if you're an owner user building a home from the ground up, you're already expecting to pay that. A developer is expecting to pay it, but they're going to be tighter on their terms, etc. So
okay. Last question, and this is a little bit of a selfish question, and I just like a quick response from each of you. Mm-hmm. We're a lender that lends money to the developers who do those, whatever, 10% of the homes that are going to be sold by developers as spec homes. What advice do you have for lenders to be useful to a developer like yourself?
We're being polite now because you asked a good question. I mean, I'm happy to.
You don't have to be polite. That's not the vibe of this podcast. The vibe of this podcast or this interview series is, let's get to the bottom line without beating around the bush. Tell me what you really think and tell me straight up.
Sure.
I think, Dylan, I can jump in for a sec. I think the one thing that when we've spoken to lenders in the past, I think transparency and communication is really helpful, as far as if we discuss sort of, let's say, a address specific, project, like, let's discuss very early on, as far as sources and uses, what makes the most sense as far as like how you guys look at a project. I think from our end, the transparency and communication is always the most helpful.
Dylan, do you have anything to add? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think lenders on single family homes, you get a wide array. You get debt funds, you get banks, etc. I think for us, speed's really important. And so this is a developer solution where, can we get advanced some money so we can go put in a deposit for windows and doors, and the second that we put up wood framing, we want to pay our subs and pay our subs quickly so they show up to the next job and the next job. So once we have a relationship, I think it's about understanding the process and then speed on funding. And then I guess the other point is, you go through a pretty arduous process on just, here's my personal financials, here's what I own, etc. It'd be good to get to the outline of what the terms look like ahead of going through the massive diligence package.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of a chicken and egg thing, and you guys price according to the package you see, but yeah.
Well, I think it varies quite a bit actually from one lender to the next, but that is extremely helpful. I really appreciate your perspective. It's a different perspective and unique from all the other interviews we've had. So I think it's going to be helpful to our audience. And I want to thank you both and wish you good luck. And we'd love to work with you in the future too.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Pleasure
Likewise.
meeting you.
Thanks, John.
Nice meeting you as well. Thanks for listening to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or neighbor who might benefit. Be sure to check the show notes for links and resources I mentioned today. And join me next time for more important insights into LA's rebuilding efforts.